A very good evening and a warm welcome to our first edition of BBC News Tonight on this 22nd day of May 2022. Before we delve into tonight's news bulletin, let's first take a look at the top stories of the night. In our headlines tonight, President Museveni expected in Omoro on Tuesday. Karamoja disarmament exercise progressing well. Martyr's Day organizing committee unveils final program. And Otuke pilgrims trekking to Namugongo for Martyr's Day. Good evening once again and welcome to UBC News Tonight. I'm Loreen Masika Kazumoto and Muhammad Mugalu on sign language interpretation. We start off with our first headlining story this evening. The national chairman for NRM, President Museveni, is set to campaign for the party candidates in Omoro parliamentary by-election next Tuesday. The Director of Communications at NRM Secretariat, Emmanuel Dombo, says all is set to receive the president and he will campaign at 2 venues. Dombo adds that the campaigns are so far peaceful. Polling day for the by-election is next week on Thursday, the 26th.
We are coming to the conclusion of the campaign period, which is going to end on Tuesday with the coming of the national chairman of NRM, who is also the president of Uganda, His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. We have had a campaign for about 9 days, and we have covered all sub-counties and all parishes, save for the remaining ones that we shall be doing in those days when the president visits, and those that are going to be done tomorrow. We have run a very peaceful campaign without any major incident. And we are very grateful to the police, to the people of Omoro, and to the candidates whom we are competing with for trying as much as possible to abide by the regulations as required by the Independent Electoral Commission. We therefore appeal to everybody that even for the remaining days, let us exercise restraint and calm. Let us play mature politics. Let us allow the people of Omoro to select the leader whom they want to lead them until the next general elections, when there is going to be another election again. The president will be coming on Tuesday, 24th. And he will specifically be in 2 venues. He will be in Opit, where the sub-counties of Lakwana, Akidi, Omoro Town Council are going to converge. Then he will also be in Odek, where we expect the sub-counties of Odek, Orafoyo, Achet, and Lalogi, which is going to where they are going to converge. But before that, we also expect the president to pay courtesy call to the home of Mzee Okori to commiserate with the family and lay wreath to the grave of the former vice chairman and speaker of the Parliament of Uganda.
The organizing a public committee ahead of the Martyr's Day celebrations at Anglican Martyr's Shrine Namugongo has revealed the program to be followed at this year's pilgrimage prayer. The program was confirmed by the committee's chairperson, Mary Karoro Okrut, accompanied by her deputy, Reverend Esau Bosa Chimanje, at the inspection of the venue for this year's celebrations. We have the details.
Preparations and plans for the Martyr's Day celebrations at Anglican Martyr's Shrine in Namugongo are in high gear, with the organizing committee touring the venue this weekend. Presidential Advisor on Public Relations Mary Karoro Okrutu inspected the venue for the celebrations. Okrutu urged the pilgrims to observe COVID-19 standard operating procedures.
Anglican site where the celebrations are going to take place. I don't know about the COVID lockdown, what happened. So after 2 years, this is when we are having these celebrations. Expecting about 20,000 pilgrims and visitors to come and attend. But they may be more, of course, because it is after 2 years and people are eager.
Right, it is time for us to hand you over to State House Nakasero, where we have been waiting for the President to address us on current affairs affecting the country. Well, we'll see you later on after the address. Have a good evening.
You remember the locusts. The rising waters of the lakes, the landslides, the floating islands that were threatening to destroy the power dams, the armyworms, Kanyananga, the COVID-19 pandemic, the terrorist attacks in Kampala and the Vijambia, who were killing people in Masaka. The resurgence of cattle rustling in Karamoja and the surrounding areas. And recently, the rising costs of commodities on account of the globe, the world, recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine. As usual, those who do not believe in God and who don't believe in themselves started panicking and predicting doom. However, with the NRM fraternity, whom God has enabled to handle even bigger problems in the past, such as the wars emanating from the unconstitutionalism in Uganda between 1966 and 1986. We are sure that each and every one of these challenges could be rationally, not irrationally, handled and resolved. As we speak today, many of these challenges have been handled. Indeed, many Ugandans may have even forgotten about these problems. They will no longer remember about the locusts, they may not remember. Where are the locusts? Where are the floating islands? Where are the rising waters? etc. Of all these problems, the COVID-19 pandemic was the most challenging. Why? It was because after a quick but careful analysis, we saw that the pandemic could indeed be handled, but with massive lockdowns starting with the unprecedented sending home prematurely of our 15 million grandchildren, the learners, pupils, students in the primary schools, the secondary schools, the tertiary institutions, and the universities, and keeping them there for 1.5 years. I do not think that this figure included the pre-primary pupils. No sooner had the pandemic confronted us than the struggle between the two lines, in quotes, to use Mao Zedong's words, started. The struggle between the two lines. Whenever there's a problem, you get two contending lines. This is the struggle between the correct line of the revolutionaries, the change makers, and the line of the reactionaries that we call in Swahili wapinga maendeleo. The struggle between, if you want to use biblical terms, the narrow path that leads to heaven and the broad road umuhanda rigendwa, they say in Nyankore, that leads to Gehenna, to hell. As it says in the book of Matthew, chapter 7, verses 13 to 14. In Nyankore they say, akahanda kafunzire, the narrow path that leads to salvation, as opposed to the broad road that leads that leads to damnation. In the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verses 26-28, it talks of man establishing dominion over nature. As I normally like to quote, it goes as follows, in quotes. Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all creatures that move along the ground." So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground." End of quotes. Right from the beginning, therefore, God empowered man to use his superior brain to find solutions to the problems that confronted him. So therefore, whenever we, the NRM, face all these problems, we are sure that with genuineness, without deceit, we can solve any problem in fairness. And we always stand on the side of justice. We always fight only just wars, wars of fairness. In the struggle between the two lines, therefore, was as follows. The revolutionary side, our side, pointed out that what was primary was to avoid death, massive death, so that is when we were dealing with corona. All other obligations, all other problems notwithstanding. That was the problem. Avoid death, massive death. When many people die in Nyankore, they call it a chorezo. Avoid a chorezo. The reactionary line was to emphasize the loss of jobs, loss of businesses, loss of school time, pregnancies of young girls, etc. Our line was that ebizibu problems are not equal or comparable to death or kufa. That was our line. You cannot compare ebizibu. I think somebody told me that in actually they call it peko. You cannot compare them with death. Death is irreversible, while the problems are reversible at the appropriate time. Our Baganda people say, "Ekitata muhima tekimala konti," which means that if a muhima, a cattle keeper, doesn't die, keeps life, even if he loses cows, he will recover them in the future. What were the results of the struggle between the two lines? Because this was really serious. You remember we were being pressurized to do things, open up churches, schools. You could even hear some of our church people arguing as if God is only in buildings. And yet when I was studying the catechism in Runyankore, I knew that Rahangari myanya yona yona. God is omnipresent. This was 1957 when I was studying for my confirmation. So how could people argue strongly that people should risk their lives to congregate in any place, including the church or the mosque, as if God is only in the church or the mosque? So we didn't accept those wrong arguments. Now, as a result of that struggle between the two lines, and we insisting on our line, what were the results of the struggle between the two lines? The extreme example of the line of Ebizibu, problems are equal to death or kufa, because some people were arguing that problems people were facing, loss of jobs, loss of businesses, pregnancies of girls, were like death, were equal. For us, we are saying, no, they are not. They are problems, but they are not equal. Death is unique and is not comparable. The extreme example of the line of Ebizibu problems are equal to death or kufa was the European country of Sweden. There's a country called Sweden, which from the beginning said, no, for us, we shall continue open, as if there is no problem, because I don't know how they were arguing. But they are one of those who never closed from the beginning. Up to now, they have a total of 18,941 people dead from the small population of 10.2 million people. Other countries were oscillating between the two lines, and the losses up to today are as follows. United States, I hear they have reached 1 million people who died. But here, they have got the figure of 993,691. I think this is a slightly older figure, but I saw in the news the other day, even Mr. Biden was saying that they have surpassed 1 million dead, the United States. UK, 177,890. France, 144,000 something. Germany, 138,000. Italy, 165,000. Spain, 105,000. India, 524,000. South Africa, 100,000. Argentina, 128,000. Brazil, 665,000. In Uganda, the death toll up to now is 3,600 out of a total of 164,000 that were infected. Our total population is now 43 million people. Those are the results of the recent struggle between the two lines. Our death from corona up to March 2021 were only 335 persons. By March last year, 2021, we had lost only 335. It was the indiscipline of the opposition during the elections that pushed the figures to the president 3,600. On account of the strictness, taking the biblical narrow path, Uganda, up to now, has had 2 waves of the corona pandemic, while other countries have had 3, and I hear even 4 waves. In Uganda, we say, Akutwale Chiro Omusima Bukedde, the one who successfully guides you in the night, you thank him in the morning for the good work. Now that we are emerging from the consecutive nights of problems, locusts, rising waters of the lakes, terrorism, cattle rustling, COVID-19, etc., it is time to both thank the NRM and reconfirm its credentials as a no-nonsense problem solver. As the other problems were being solved or were waning in severity, in comes the problem of high costs for commodities. Of course, the problem of high commodity prices is much easier to deal with, and it is not new. At the beginning of the NRM administration in 1986, and for the period 1972 to 1986, following the expulsion of the Ugandan Indian entrepreneurs by Idi Amin, Uganda experienced continuous high inflation, severe shortages of commodities, which were called so-called essential commodities, very high prices, forex black market called kibanda, smuggling of goods out and into Uganda, magendo, and speculation, okusamula. All these were solved by the NRM. And indeed, the recent problem of Echengera, Omweru Runyankore, Echengera in Uganda, Omweru Runyankore, meaning surplus, a glut, when you have got very many products of sugar, soap, maize, milk, bananas, cement, mitayimbwa, steel bars, and other industrial products is a result of that success. It is because we handled the shortages of 1986 correctly that recently we have been having the opposite problem of too much surplus, which had no internal market. This is why we have been engaging with neighbors, e.g. Tanzania, Kenya, to help us solve the problem of Echengera, surpluses Omweru. How did the NRM solve the problem of Ebola lyebintu, Ebola shortages of between 1972 and 1986? We shall see how in this document later. However, this history is clear. Therefore, the recent phenomenon of high commodity prices is indeed a problem, but it is easier to solve than, for instance, COVID-19 was. COVID-19 needed severe restrictions and new science, e.g. vaccines. It was a new problem. It needed new solutions and a lot of restrictions. The problem of the high prices, this one, would be solved with existing knowledge, but rightly applied. The high commodity prices are from the following factors. Number one, the end of COVID-19 pandemic meant that sectors of the economy in the world, in the whole world, sectors of the economy in the whole world that had been closed, such as hotels, suddenly opened. When the production of, for instance, palm oil for soap manufacture had also declined because there had been no demand for 2 years. You see, that's the problem. There was pandemic, hotels were closed, schools were closed, places where people gather were all closed. So, if I am producing palm oil to make soap for people who are gathered in schools, in hotels, in gathering places, now the demand for soap goes down because, yes, people are still using soap in their homes, but it is not the same amount as when people are gathered in hotels, in schools, in gathering places. So the demand for soap went down. So when the demand for soap goes down because of closing of hotels, then the manufacturers also either got bankrupt, because some of the people got bankrupt, the ones who are selling who are depending on selling products for making soap. And some of the factories were closed, because you remember, Corona also meant closing of factories, because factories also were a target of Corona. So because of that, either the suppliers went bankrupt, or some of them even went to other products, converted instead of producing for soap. I can convert my palm oil to petroleum, because they can change. So when now the economy opens suddenly, the demand is no longer able to meet the supply is no longer able to meet the demand. They resumed production. The resumed production levels cannot yet match the demand. That's one problem. Number two, I also hear that some of the producers decided to turn their palm oil into petrol, just like we were about to turn our surplus sugar into petrol as a way of solving the problem of chengara, of sugar. You remember we've been stuck with sugar here. Our production is now 700,000 tons of sugar per year in Uganda, from zero in 1986. But our internal consumption is 380,000. So as we speak now, there's a surplus of 320,000. So we have been begging our neighbors, please, please, please take the sugar. Sometimes they take, sometimes we have been begging them. We have been seeing us in meetings with Kenya, with Tanzania, with Rwanda, which had closed the border, but now they have opened. Congo have not, they have been taking, and South Sudan. We are very happy. But because of the continued uncertainty, we are now going to move away from just depending on sugar for tea, brown sugar, raw sugar. We are saying, okay, why don't we convert our sugar into petroleum? Because then the demand will be endless. And we had resolved on that, but recently some of our neighbors have started buying again. So similarly, these producers of palm oil, I hear that they have started converting it into petroleum. Then number 3, the war in Ukraine and the Western sanctions on Russia have also caused shortages of wheat for the bread eaters that do not include me, because I am a muhogo, karo, banana eater, and milk drinker. Also shortages of fertilizers